semiconductors are key important industry. Our becoming AI.
Hello, good morning everyone. Thank you for joining in. So my name is Sakshi Sabu and I am the host for the today's masterclass series. And on behalf of Credible, I welcome you all. Thank you for joining here. So let me be direct. We are not here to talk about sustainability in abstract or just checking the compliance box. We are here because the rule have fundamentally changed. Disclosure is global, data must be defensible, climate risk is financial risk, and leadership requires intelligence. So today we have two sessions, two master classes. One is on the ESG data management and second is regarding the climate risk analysis. So before starting in, let me have a moment to introduce about Credible, what Credible is and what we do. Credible is an AI-powered sustainability and climate intelligence platform and helping enterprises to measure, manage, report ESG performance from single source of truth. Credible has four offerings. First is ESG data management platform where you can measure, manage, report. Everything is super powered by AI. Second is the climate risk intelligence platform where physical and transition risk modeling powered by NASA, NEX, NEFS translated into audit-ready financial qualified insights. Third is intelligent supply chain assessment where AI-driven visibility into supplier performance, emissions, and compliance, where currently we have launched 25,000 plus suppliers and assist them. Fourth is traceability and material provenance. Batch level traceability from raw material to finished goods with certifiable, variable, and audit trails. All supercharged with AI, automated data extraction, emission factor auto mapping, peer benchmarking, trusted by 180 plus customers. But today, it's not about the product, it's about the transformation it enables. So, let's start our first masterclass. So, our first masterclass is ESG reporting playbook, where BRSR, GRI, IFRS, and the global regulatory shifts. So to start with, please join me in welcoming Adil, who is Associate Director ESG at Credible ESG, and Preeti Dubey, ESG Manager at Credible ESG. They will give not just theory, but a practical examples how things have been doing. Yeah, please.
I hope I can open this. Hello. Yeah. Hi. Good morning, all. So it's thank you for being here. It's pleasure to talk in front of the professionals, the leaders, and those who are involved in the biggest transformation, basically ESG reporting. So to start with, the session is more about ESG reporting and beyond borders. And so, yeah. Yeah. So when we start about the ESG reporting, this time that is more about, not just about the sustainability and the CSR reporting, basically not just a glossy reports, it's more about the governance, the finance, and the structure. Basically how the ESG is integrated into the ERM. Yeah, thank you. I'll just have, yeah. So basically, these days, ESG has moved from a communications function to the core of an enterprise strategy, basically a involvement of a cross-functional team, finance, risk, and more of the departments. So I want to take you through the evolution of the ESG reporting, basically. and explain how the India's BRSR framework basically fits into the global regulations and frameworks which has come. So the major insights would be, yeah. So I want to take you to the major insights. The first one is basically how the ESG reporting has evolved from the storytellings and narratives and to the globally compliance. The second one is basically how the Indian companies think beyond the BRSR to stay globally competitive, and we can align with the global regulations and the compliance. And third one is basically how ESG can prepare how we can prepare for the next phase of ESG, that is more of the audit readiness, digitization.
He is Srikanth Panigrani. He is
Yeah.
our chief guest.
Okay.
He is connected with your sustainability. I told him he is there. So you have to. So we'll start the day with this 5 minutes word.
Sure. Okay. So you want to take?
Or I can tell his first. It's okay, no? You started.
Yeah, no worries.
So good morning to all of you. One thing is I am very happy that you are all what you call environment friendly, or you are all a socially responsible citizen, and you also upload ethical governance. So ESG, that is the most important part. And in spite of your busy schedule and being Monday, all of you have responded and come here. That is also that shows that you are believing in the business responsibility and social report of the SEBI. And Credible, as all of you know, both India and globally, they are a very grown company, and I had the pleasure of being an advisor to Credible. And today, Credible has got to a particular stage. From here again, they will be at least doubling, tripling of their clientele. So my friend Jitesh Shetty and Sushil Chaudhary, Partha Patil, and currently Mr. Viral Thakkar from Delight has joined, and Delight is their global partner. In the international, externally, Delight is their global partner. So we have Dr. Srikanth Panigrani. He is the Director General of Indian Institute of Sustainable Development. So he has been our chief guest in the upper hall. There is a program going on, and I requested him to come here because he also knows Credible and he also knows Jitesh Shetty. They conduct a lot of awareness program, training program. They are also engaged with the the central government, and they are also connected with the preparation for India's COP, which is coming in 2028. And he is also in the mission for climate change from the government of India, and being a earlier principal secretary. Now I request Dr. Srikanth Panigrani, because it's a golden opportunity for all of you to hear from him a few on the overall subject, and also an encouragement to all of you in your pursuit of ESG. Sir, please come. Aram se.
It is a great pleasure to spend some time with all of you this morning, and where you all are here together to discuss something very important, ESG, the environment, social governance. And you must be aware about BRSR, you must be aware about BRSR core, and ESG, why for ESG, what is exactly this, what is ESG risk, what is ESG rating, who does it. So it's a vast area and subject of the day. I myself, Dr. Srikanth K. Panigrahi, Director General, Indian Institute of Sustainable Development, New Delhi. I am former Principal Secretary Environment, Forest and Energy, Niti Aayog and Planning Commission. Right now, I am a member to Honorable Prime Minister on National Strategic Knowledge Mission on Climate Change, where we are engaged in devising climate policies in the interest of the nation. How many of you heard about integrated reporting? You have already heard of, very good. So integrated reporting, what is integrated reporting? How it is different from annual reporting? In annual report, if you see an annual report of a company, it largely contains financial audits, financial balance sheet against the activities of the company. But there is a greater demand that only financial audit is not enough. You should also do a social audit. You should also do a social balance sheet. You should also do environmental audit. You should have an environmental balance sheet. And against similar type of activities, you should have social, environmental, as well as financial. All the three type of auditing and balance sheet and total loss or profit, the social activities of this year is different from last year, whether you have improved or you have gone back with a negative gear. What is the ecological footprint, there are various indicators of social audits. What are the things under social audits you will look for? What are the, like one annual report is coming, so you can bring sustainability report of the company separately with social and environmental indicators, auditing and balance sheet. And annual report is always there, so it is allowed. Otherwise, what you will do, all the social, environmental and financial, you will put it in one document, which will be known as integrated report of the company. So it will contain all the audits and all the indicators, and it will be very transparent and what the company is doing. Who will say how BRSR is different from ESG? You know BRSR? BRSR is mandated by SEBI. Now it is mandated for first 1,000 company, but when it was started, it was for 50 companies. धीरे धीरे बढ़ के 1000 हो गया, and it will सबको लागू हो जाएगा. So the way CSR came, Government of India or India believes, let it be a MNC, let it be an Indian company, anyone who is doing business in India. Doing business means looking for profit. So the profit has to be optimized, not maximized. And what is the difference between profit maximization and optimization? Optimization means it will also take care of social and environmental issues. In Indian soil, anybody is doing business should take care of the business responsibility. And it is acted by law. One cannot go away only considering profit. So it is answerable to people of the nation, that is social, and environment of the country, that is, planet. So the planetary responsibility, societal responsibility of the business, if you are doing business in this country, you have to take care. Even if you are a MNC, so ESG is seen as a foreign concept by India. It is good. It makes you very efficient. It makes you to innovate your business and in a longer context, in long run, so that you exist in the business and with strong footings, redefining the innovation time to time, considering the challenges that is ESG gives you. And but at the same time, you are also required to comply the social and environmental obligation of the nation. BRSR core is the very recent. We are a part of SEBI, to a consulting group to advise how BRSR core could be more relevant to Indian companies. It is not to harass the companies, rather to support them, to help them to get the business, more business, and in a successful way in the long run to come. How many of you know greenwashing? How many type of greenwashings are there? There are 6 type of greenwashings are there. So all of this you will learn. So greenwashing is marketing company most of the time lie down to create a cheap popularity or image building by spreading wrong connotations which are not in the ground. And in how many ways it can be there are all possibilities. So I would like to wish you a good class and nice time and good learning. And I am very well known to Jitesh. He is very much committed, and Credible is the international brand, and so I hope you will benefit and go away with good learning. Anybody who is interested to have my coordinates can connect, and we are always round the clock to help you and support you in your positive work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable insights on ESG. Yeah. So yeah, I was saying like that, so ESG has moved basically from, so ESG has moved from communication function into the core of enterprise strategy of a business. So in this session, basically we'll talk more about the evolution of the ESG reporting and explain how this India's BRSR framework basically fits into the global ecosystem. And we'll discuss and we'll go deep dive into how these international regulations affect even the domestic companies and how the companies can prepare for the next phase of ESG, which is audit readiness, digitization, and align with the global frameworks. So by the end of this session, we would like to give you 3 major insights. That would be, the first one is that ESG reporting has evolved from storytelling or the narratives to the compliance architecture. Second one would be more about how the Indian companies must think beyond the BRSR and stay globally compliant, basically, globally compliant and competitive. And third one would be more about the future of ESG, that is more about the data, governance, and the integration with the financial decision making. How we can take the financial decisions and be strategic. Yeah. So let me begin with that. So how ESG reporting actually evolved? The section 1 is, so the section 1 is more about the evolution of the ESG reporting. So if we look historically, we can divide this journey into 4 phases. The very first one is basically how basically ESG reporting is not just a sustainability or a CSR reporting, where the companies used to produce more of a glossy and reporting which mostly focus on the environmental initiatives and the community data and all of that. But the reports basically highlights more about the, as I mentioned, the brand positioning. So the main objective there was, in the first phase, is basically the reputation, that we are just publishing our sustainability report. Phase 2 introduced basically more on the investor-driven ESG metrics. That is, that investors demand more on the ratings, the benchmarkings across the sector and across the companies, and how they can compare the data. So ESG has moved mostly from a capital markets. So companies started tracking their KPIs mostly on emissions and social KPIs and governance KPIs. So that is more about the phase 2. Phase 3 is basically a major shift where ESG became more about the risk and governance. So regulators and boards started asking that how do the climate risk basically affects our financial performance? How does the supply chain exposure impact the long-term value? So basically, as I mentioned, ESG began integrating into our enterprise risk manager, our ERM. So the phase 1, then the phase 1 come, that is more the regulated, the assured, and a digitized disclosure. So information nowadays, it should be more of a audit readiness, audit ready, standardized, and tagged digitally. So sustainability data is increasingly, it's more like treated like a financial data that has to be assured, that has to be traceable, and how the information is coming from. So, yeah. So the key takeaway here is very simple. That is how the ESG reporting from storytelling has shifted to the risk management and how it has basically shifted to the compliance. Why are we reporting on ESG? Coming to the next slide, that is, okay. So the next slides talk more about the 2026 regulatory countdown or the key milestone and deadlines. So basically this time few regulations have come, EU taxonomy, where SFDR 2.0, EU ESG ratings and regulations, UK SRS, which is basically the UK sustainability reporting standard, and California, this SB 253 and 261, EBA, European Banking Agency. So that is more about how, the few standards and the frameworks had come this year. For EU taxonomy, the few financial undertaking disclosure KPIs on taxonomy, basically like what kind of environmental KPIs can be taken. SFDR 2.0 is more about that has amended, and Article 6 is updated basically. That has been removed and updated to Article 8. EU ESG ratings is basically comes into the effect. And for European Banking Agency, that is EBA guidelines on the management of ESG risk become applicable for the large institutions. And on 31st December 2026, critical go-live reference data for the amendment of ESG pillar that has been done. And January 2027 onwards, the final guidelines on environmental scenario analysis, that is mostly focused on EU banks, so that they can integrate the climate-related disclosures. You can move to the next slide. Yeah. So basically, strategies for navigating the global ESG regulatory landscape is basically how we can, how we can navigate our ESG regulatory landscape. The very first one would be how we can leverage the technology, how we can be more updated to the continuous learning and adaptation, how we can collaborate and engage with our stakeholders and with our clients, and how we can integrate the ESG into the business strategy. So the very first one is, as it's mentioned, leverage the technology, which is like how we can implement the right technology or solutions that can streamline our data collection and the ESG data basically, and how we can comply that with our various regulations. The second one is the continuous learning and adaptation, how we can be more updated to the ESG regulations and trends and framework which is coming on, and how business can invest or, in the continuous learning. The third one is how we can collaborate with the industry, the regulators, and stakeholders, so as to provide the best practices coming in the sector or in the trends are coming. Last one is how we can integrate ESG into the business strategy, considering the core business strategy and ensure how the compliance is there into the picture. The next is basically we can go to, so how we can prepare for the new ESG reality standards. So earlier the company were used to conduct a traditional materiality. Basically that was based on a GRI. And how we can shift to the double materiality, that is one of the standards of the CSRD. how we can shift from traditional to double materiality. So traditional materiality was more about how our company is impacting. For example, so that is the impact materiality. That is more on inside out impact, which is that how our company's operation basically affect the people, the ecosystem and the environment. And double materiality came into the picture, which is the impact plus the financial materiality. The impact materiality is inside out, how our company is affecting the outwards, and financial is basically how the outward, which is basically its outward in. So that talks more about I'll have water. Water I have. Yeah. So double materiality has two lenses, as I mentioned, the impact materiality and the financial materiality. Basically, it's a outside in risk. The financial materiality is basically more about the outside in risk. This looks how the sustainability issues like your climate change that could disrupt our supply chain. So that's how it increases the cost and eventually how it would affect the asset values. Impact materiality is more about the inside out impact. That is how our company affects the outside people or the communities or the ecosystem. So basically modern ESG framework basically in Europe, they require to assess the both perspective, outside in or inside out. So that's where it comes into the picture, double materiality. So that is how we are transitioning more towards to the new ESG reality and assessing both of the impact of the company financially and or the impact materiality. So coming to the next slide, that would be more about the omnibus timeline. Basically, EU regulations are preparing the companies so that they can be more aligned towards the framework and how well they can be ready to report on their ESG data. So few updates have come, as you are seeing. So the first one is basically, so the purple dots is indicating the knock-on effects, and the magenta one basically that indicates the critical moves, basically the deadlines. So on 2nd April 2025, I'll start with 8th November. The EU Commission basically, they published the Budapest Declaration on these are new European competitiveness deal. Then on 2nd April, the EU Parliament, basically they approved the Stop the Clock directive as a part of the Omnibus 1 proposal. Basically, how well we can be ready to report on our ESG, the data basically. So, yeah. Adil, would you like to take this? Okay, fine. Yeah, so coming to the next one, basically. This is the ISSB, which is the global baseline. How this IISB, basically the IFRS, that was more about the financial data, but ISSB is more about the sustainability data. So IFRS was mostly a financial one, but that is integrated with the and aligned with the ISSB, and that is basically for our sustainability data and how it is the global baseline. So this basically represents a major step towards sustainability disclosures, harmonization between the different framework. So ISSB focuses more on the financial materiality, the governance structure, the strategy, ERM, our risk management, and the metrics. So how this is actually, impacting the Indian companies. Basically, they are seeking the international capital or operating across the global borders and aligning with the ISSB principles. And so CDSB, basically, that was Corporate Disclosure on Sustainability. Okay, I'm not getting that. So, yeah, so the first one is the TCFD, which has now transitioned more towards the IFRS. So, IFRS is mostly the advanced version of TCFD. And ISSB is, as I mentioned, is the global baseline, considering the TCFD, GRI, CDP, IR. It is a combination of all the frameworks. Yeah, and was basically our value reporting foundation was more on the SASB, that was mostly on our sector-based standards, particularly for the sectors. And how this IFRS is basically include IR, SASB, your GRI, CDP, a global framework disclosure, a global disclosure framework, and TCFD. So IFRS is the leading. IFRS was the, I would say it was the, previously it was IFRS, now it's IFRS, but now it's more about the ISSB because it has the sustainability disclosure as well. S1 and S2. S1 is basically your general disclosures, and S2 is mostly focusing on your climate-related disclosures. Yeah. So next would be more on, yeah. So this slide would discuss on the how the evolution of sustainability disclosure has evolved in India. So basically, India in the starting, we had BRR. Basically, that was more on business reporting, business responsibility reporting, and how it has been transitioned to BRSR, basically on the on the principle of NGBRC. That is okay. Fine. Adil wants to take that. Okay. Fine. Come. Okay.
Hi. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Preeti. So let's start with now what is more context to you guys, right? The BRSR framework that was started 2021, before that BRR, right? And then there was something called BRSR Lite. Anybody have done a BRSR Lite? Show of hands. Yeah, one. Okay, Aru. So it doesn't, so nobody have heard of BRSR Lite, but it was there. It was a more of a consolidated approach before the actual BRSR was rolled out. You can take like a prototype version by SEBI. Nobody have done that, so we'll skip right out of it. Before entering this whole realm, right, why do you, sorry, we have the entire BRSR narrative, right? How did we reach BRSR from a viewpoint of BRR from BRSR, right? So how does it work? BRR essentially just included your basic metrics, more of a qualitative approach. We don't have any method to distinguish between two different type. Anybody again with a BRR writing experience? Yes, most of the people with 10 plus or 15 plus experience will have got their hand dirty with BRRs, which is far simpler to implement on a basis. You don't require as many stakeholders or as many departments to work together coming down with the metrics. You don't get harassed for doing it wrong a bit. You don't get badly rated. Your reputation is not at risk with BRR, but BRSR, the single thing by adding that one letter of S, which is sustainability, changed everything, right, as we know it. So from primarily a narrative approach where we told stories, which we still tell stories using BRSR, we came to a more metric driven, which can be used with other reporting standards as well. Companies are more focused on it right now, since most of you guys have already done at least a year or two worth of BRSR right now. So what we are seeing in the current market is not just getting the numbers right, like not just right, but also providing evidences against those numbers. So that's where the market is right now. And then there is a lot of pressure and everything on the supply chain part as well, since BRSR going ahead is asking for those kind of details as well, right? So that's what's changing. It's become mandatory for, I think, all the companies that are sitting right now. There is an introduction of BRSR Core, which is roughly around 40% of your entire BRSR, mainly focusing heavily on the environmental side, around 60%, and then 40% on the social financial indicators as well, right? So that's what's changing with the whole, the reporting boundary or the reporting structure kind of an area within India. And just want, oh, sorry. Yeah, I wanted to come back to this slide. How many people ever have gotten to do an IFRS report or is beginning to think about doing an IFRS S1, S2? Anybody in the audience? Okay. Oh, why, sir? Why do you think IFRS has to be adopted?
A lot of the financial institutions are now looking at climate change from a very financial materiality point of view. That's why it's very important for companies to move towards
IFRS.
The financial community is mostly moving there.
Yes. Good reason. Because it's more finance metric related, it points out the risks that is more interested to companies, especially non-listed companies as well, because of angel investors or everybody who is looking to, invest into a company. Right now, company around 30 billion of assets, $1 billion of assets is always driven by ESG. Like they do a holistic ESG check before even investing $1 into a company. So it's very important. Another thing what we have noticed why companies shifting to an IFRS approach, basically it's to, so you form your strategy, you form your committees, you have initiatives running, you finally report it. That's the end point, right? Mostly you want to now tell your stakeholders that we have been doing this for so many years. But what IFRS helps you is to go for a rating as well, right? So every company right now who are mature, which is my audience right now, has done a year or two of worth of BRSR reporting, right? They know how to report their metrics. They know which teams to ask for the data, right? Pretty much secure, right, in terms of reporting. Now companies are going and looking at an angle of a ESG rating, right? What IFRS just did is they incorporated CDP into the whole mix, which gives them access of the whole SBTI, which is what everybody is looking into, because India's goal of 2070, right? We have to be net zero by 2070. So we do have net zero goals. Many companies are very much interested to do it. People who have operations in Europe has to get it done by 2050. So a lot of companies are now concentrating on decarbonization, on sustainability ratings, because ratings are taken as, again, as an investment metrics by many companies, right? So what they did is they integrated everything together. So now, basically how you guys do rating, you guys have to first form your report, then you will have to align it with some rating for framework, identify gaps, fill in the gaps. So that's basic rating strategy 101, right? So that's how you do it. Instead, what IFRS gives you is already access to those questions within CDP in their disclosure, right? This was earlier done by GRI, which is like the mother of all reporting standards. Any reporting standards you take, you will always see GRI questions repeated over and over again. And then there are always new and innovative questions that is there. So that's how the whole world of IFRS work. This interoperability provided by an international standard helps us to jump between different standards, jump between different rating systems as well, right? So again, this is a whole data gap that is also there with BRSR, since it's very custom to certain metrics, right? It does not give us a whole variety of flexibility to ratings or anything, because practically even if you do the whole reporting thing with BRSR, you still have to do another whole exercise to go into any kind of rating like a DGSI, CDP, EcoVadis, etc. Right? So that's how the whole global baseline, or companies who are looking to expand into the ratings or investment-driven approaches, again, more into climate change related initiatives. Everybody must start looking into the whole IFRS S1, S2, right? So that's why this just wanted to recap a bit there. Yeah. So what does BRSR cover, right? And you guys already mostly know this, right? I don't want to go line by line, but I want to hear from the audience. What do you feel right now with more than a year of reporting experience? What do you think the most challenging part of a BRSR is? Anybody from the audience? Getting the data right. Next, anybody else?
Getting the data from value chain.
Getting the data from value chain, very valid question. Anybody else? Scope 3 emission calculation, though it sits in leadership indicators, right? Yeah. Okay, next, anybody?
Alignment with the guidelines, basically. The
NRGBC guidelines?
Yeah. So BRSR have their own guidelines, right?
Exactly.
So most of the companies are not aligned with that.
Exactly, good. So, framework alignment. Okay, perfect. That we'll be explaining a little more. Next one. Gathering evidences. So, that's basically audit readiness. Anything else? Cool. So, let's start breaking down the BRSR part, right? Let's start with XBRL. What we have seen, right? So, this is basically to give you more information on what's happening within the industries. XBRL and the PDF. There are two things that we publish. Does it match always? Or do you think it always matches for your organization, at least? Right. So being credible a platform company, we do evaluate BRSR using the XBRLs as well, right? We do have the processing to make it back into a BRSR report and then do comparisons to any kind of PDF as well. So while we do this, we notice a huge change, right? The values mentioned in BRSR and the value mentioned in XBRL doesn't match always. Why this is there? Because we all use something called a BRSR utility tool, right, which is directly downloadable from both BSE and NSE. Direct download, you just put in the numbers, plug out the validation, and then just do the result in the end. So this essentially do not match because in case of PDFs, you have the flexibility, and then in the other case, you do not have the flexibility. Essentially, you are forced to put some numbers. Best example, anybody, where it never matches? Revenue. Next. This is a very good example where this will never match ever, ever, ever. I think SEBI is also not doing anything to match. The maternity and the paternity benefit part, it will never match because of that equation that is put there, right? So they have to make changes in the both PDF as well, or the general guidelines as well. The industry standards do not cover it. So that's essentially a big gap, right? We will never have a matching values. So what happens? So imagine a rating agency picks your XBRLs for evaluating. Also, they will compare it with the PDF evidences as well. It will never match. That shows that will be red flagged. And as you know, most of the systems like DGSI, MSCI currently purely lies on AI-based extractions. So it's never matching. It's already started showing red flags, right? Because an analyst will never even reach there to read those values. It will be already red flagged and your score have already gone there, right? It's just sad because that's a problem with the whole framework provider rather than ours. So what do? You either do an extra evidence or another evidence you upload instead of the PDF and the XBRL as well, because they will be anyway searching through the internet to find these files. So make sure that you guys have ample amount of evidence to support these values. But yes, so that's a huge error that is always there. So the XBRL is always a problematic area for any company because of the fundamental errors in the BRSR frameworks itself, right? Another point is on the audit readiness, right? Companies, what we have seen the trend is nobody's want to just track numbers, but less on their evidence part as well. Companies have started asking what are the required evidences for certain. So certain areas it's very easy to gather evidence, like your environmental indicator is mostly covered with your operations team or your engineering team already has the value. But if you go again deeper into the social, where there are sensitive documents involved, right? But again, BRSR, what did they do? They just changed from assurance to an assessment viewpoint. So it's far easier to get an assessment done than an actual assurance. Somebody giving you an assurance that your number's right. I can easily assess you and tell you your number seems to be right, right? So that's what have changed there a bit. And then the final thing, again, interdependent, like we are dependent on lot of data from lot of stakeholder who does not even know what the data is used for. Right. Final point is on the supply chain bit. How, so we at Credible track a lot of company supply chain values, like we do assessments and those kind of things. So we are sitting with over 1,000+ supplier data, but companies are unable to know and do, what to do with that data, right? how do you publish it? How do you answer to it? So that's a huge gap that is right now in the market. I mean, pretty much sure ki every one of you already is asking this question on which reporting period to consider for supply chain assessment. Do we do the current year? Do we do the last year? And the second point being what to do with the data once they provide you the data, right? So these two questions still sits among us. So these are the various gaps, or those specific points that we feel from client to client, which is like commonly faced by everybody, right? Yes, and the top rules, I'm not going it one by one, already. This year, 500 companies has to do their assurance, and then 1,000 plus has to do their reporting, which already there are 1,000 plus reports, because companies will never wait for the last year to do their BRSR reporting. Most of the companies who are not even there covered in the top 500 last year had already report published in the domain. Or at least in their websites, right? And this year it's going to be more focused around the assurance part, since the value chain again has been bumped up to another year, right? So that's what's happening. Yeah. Now, just want to give a little bit instance, because CBAM essentially do not have a lot of influence on you guys, because I know most of you, and then most of your industries do not fall within those specific industries asked by CBAM, all right? But why do you think, CBAM would be necessary in the Indian market? Any idea? How would this essentially help your industry? Okay, but do you come within those 4 specific industries? Steel, aluminium, hydrogen, fertilizers, ammonia. Right, yeah. You fall in supply chains, yes, exactly, right? So what CBAM essentially have helped India is that India's smaller MSMEs who had high imports to EU have started doing their PCF. Basically, CBAM is nothing but another name for PCF. CBAM gives us a very good open world look into how to do a PCF in the most easiest way. That is just using an Excel, by not conducting a very serious LCA, which might take months on months, depending on the number of parts or products you produce. Especially I'm just taking parts because of the steel industry being heavily influenced here. We are working with a few of them, and they don't even know what are the 6 GHG gases, right? So that's another thing. But what we have noticed is, even if I am doing it for an MSME supplier for a CBAM, their suppliers' value also has to come in. So if I have a steel company, either I'm procuring from major steel giants like Tata Steel, JSW, etc., right? So they have to provide me values, right? That still isn't there, right? So this essentially, now the company is forced, right? I have a client who's being forced by their customer in EU to give out the correct values, not assumption-based values, so they can be taxed properly. I mean, the customer, of course, gets taxed, but they want to get the tax correctly, and then there is a whole competition from the Chinese market on the same thing, and they are giving out the supply, the values for the GHG emissions that is being procured. Even for my base company, just taking an example, we are getting values from the international markets like the Chinese market, etc. Since they are the largest steel suppliers of the world, we are second, third is Japan. So generally, if I take any MSME, they will have 2 imports. One is coming from Indian domestic market, and one usually coming from the Chinese market. Chinese people are actually giving us the values, but Indian giants are still hesitant to give us the values. How do we do it? The only way to track your emissions or anything would be from the BRSR's intensities, which I can take to a certain extent if you actually report something per product, right? So that's the only approach we were able to take in terms of CBAM, right? But so CBAM requires a lot of look into, even though it does not have any direct influence to India. We are not liable, or we do not have any regulatory constraints talking about CBAM, but CBAM essentially will help you, especially big corporations, to track their MSMEs PCFs, which is a good data point for scope 3 emission, right? Which is what I think companies are now desperately trying to upbring in their whole ecosystem. Since scope 1, scope 2, you guys are already covered and good with it. When you tackle the actual scope 3 categories, you'll understand how much important is supplier-based emission factors, and then CBAM comes into play. So it's very crucial for even Indian companies who are not liable for CBAM regulations to understand how CBAM works, to understand how the calculation methodology, because going ahead, the MSMEs or whoever you are working with, the lower tier 1, tier 2 suppliers will be definitely would be able to give you at least values in terms of the CBAM regulated values, which is essentially just another name for, let's take not a detailed LCA, but a lighter form of the LCA should suffice us, right? Since it's not a auditable or, non-threatening value, but instead of using US emission factors or the UK emission factors, at least if we can, get a better one from India itself, it's much better. So that's where the whole point of CBAM comes into play. Yeah. Can we move?
CBAM is going to be a big burden.
Yeah.
We practically face this situation. I represent ACC and we manufacture packaging material which has aluminum foil embedded in the packaging material. And we are reporting on CBAM since last over 1 year. And from this year it become applicable for penalty clause as well. So it is going to be very burden on Indian industries particularly, because if you see, we are in Europe since last over 10 years, but the industries in Europe are well advanced in terms of their GHG reductions. To compete with their emissions level, otherwise having the penalty, it's a big burden for the Indian industry. So though we are not, many of us will not be falling in the first phase, but it is going to spread over the other industries slowly over the years. So we should be ready and should work on GHG actually absolute reduction points. That's the message. Thanks.
Thank you, sir, for that. So exactly, right, if you cannot compete, which we are already seeing from Chinese market and other international markets as well, who are more transparent. Again, question is whether they are right or not, we still don't know, right, whether their calculation or anything is actually correct or not, but still, having a value versus not having a value really differentiates two companies. And when somebody gives us actual proofs, we'll always be likely to go with that company than going with somebody who's still saying ki we can give you the value maybe 2 years or 3 years down the line. So that's actually something matters, and that is how all of these things, right, that even Preeti talked about and even I talked about ties up together. See, Indian context, Indian listed companies or even non-listed companies who are more investor driven can still stick with the BRSR framework, but is that enough is the question that we need to ask, right? What is next? Going ahead, what will be the, the non-influential things? Example is CBAM, and more influential things like ratings, right, which is more important because that's the showcase ki we are doing this much, right? Nobody is going to read a 150-page report, right? Nobody is going to read your IRs. People are only going to see environment, what is your score in DGSI, S&G, what is your score, and that's it, makes a decision based on it. So that's why all this ties up, right? That is where you are going to be asked questions next. It's not just going to be in the world of BRSRs, but more, outreach and outlook into the whole world of other rating systems, other regulations that is in the market, which are non-influential to Indian companies as well. Next one. Yeah. Basically, just before we enter how interoperations can work, just wanted to say, just to wrap up our whole points, what are the different challenges that we have faced and what we see in the current market? Basically, lack of data, limited awareness, fragmented standards, right? So we have, I think, more than 100 standards plus right now in the world. Last month, I think 3 or 2 got introduced, which one is UK SRS, and then there are 2 more which got introduced. So every month or something, at least one new standard is being added to the market. It may not directly impact you as of now, but large corporations who has offices in different parts of the world definitely will start coming into all these picture, especially your subsidiary companies which are there, right? So how do you unite all of this in one single report? It's not again directly related to your IRs or anything. IR is nothing but just including one more framework into it, which is companies used to do IIRCs, which is like the other framework which used to be there for IR reporting, which is keywords like manufacturing capital, human capital, these words you would have heard. This is not essentially required for Indian companies anymore, because you can just tie up your annual report with the session with your BRSR, which essentially makes you financial report as well as your non-financial report. That's an IR, right? That's the that will suffice for the thing. But again, when you compare it with other global standards, Indian standards do not have that much flexibility, do not have that kind of alignment with those standards, and then the rating systems as well. So that's another issue that is there. And then what are the opportunities? You do technology integrations, understand how do you translate from one standard framework to another standard framework, right? It's not easy on just a Word document or anything, because of, you know how much Excel sheets or how many worksheets you actually require. Instead, if you have something that can always, pull different things like your CRA analysis, your GSG analysis, all to maybe one thing, and then you export it to a CDP platform, right? So that's how technology essentially helps to solve the problem of a lack of global standard, that is currently what we are lacking, and then data gathering, and then evidence requirements, etc. Right? Yeah. So basically, just focusing on different regional ESG rules. This is generally the current one which are out there, which is the US. We have the California Act. Then you have the United Kingdom, the UK SRS, which is just came last month. Then you also have the Australian ASRS. Right, again, very heavily dependent on the IFRS frameworks, right? So what we see right now, people are not copying GRI, but more copying the IFRS framework, which adds another layer of double materiality, and then the climate policies, and then you also have the risk analysis to a better great deal, so that they can actually go for a rating system. This is what the Indian framework or the BRSR framework really lacks in, right? But the newer generation frameworks have that specific elements built into it. Does BRSR have a materiality layer? We do have on the 26th question of the general disclosure, which just outlines our materiality elements, but never asks for a materiality analysis, or there is no, anybody can write anything there. Nobody actually has a check for all these things. But yes, so it's high time that we also move into the whole, realm of double materiality. Still, its effectiveness is still questioned, but still, that's where the world is moving on to, and then we also have to adopt to keep up with our competition as well, right? Next. So how do we harmonize, right? This is where we require to build a single source of truth, where we can have all these standards and different things as far as we are concerned, right? Like how many standards we want to pick up, how many ratings we want to pick up, how do we bring in all these things together with using BRSRs. Right. So basically there are multiple areas of alignment that is required. For example, we are very much aligned with GRI, right? Everybody can agree to that. Like all of our question is also present in the GRI framework. Now, what is happening with GRI? GRI has just shifted their entire leadership around, and then there's new people coming in. We are expecting a lot of changes with GRI. So we are also expecting a lot of changes with BRSR to make it more sector specific, because a lot of questions are not even sector specific in terms of BRSR, right? They randomly ask a service-based industry a question on EPR, right? So there is no context, there is no specifications of sector standards or anything that exists with the BRSR. So how do we do it? There's only way is to collect all the data to a single source, and then, sending it fragmented to different standards can be made easy with technology. A lot with technology because you don't have to sit and copy paste over and over again for the same realm of questions, right? So that's just a slide on like how do we integrate all these things together. IFRS is something that we really need to take a look into to see how that is going to now pan out, especially with S1 and S2. How do we do more of a double materiality analysis? How do we put our financial and reputational risk? How does the whole climate policy and the climate change we actually see out there come into picture? This is going to be the next section as well. I think you guys will be far more interested to know now a specific aspect of all these reporting, especially which is more currently themed, even though Trump pulled out of the climate deal, right? Sad news for all sustainability folks, but still, how does the whole climate change perspective, right? How do we do that kind of analysis? How does that translate into reporting, and why again that is important is going to be covered with the next session. And just summarizing, we really require a better standard, more aligned to ESG ratings, because companies are now started going into that kind of mindset. So that's something that we really want to, and yeah, that's my conclusion note as well. It's a open Q&A for maybe like 5-10 minutes more we have. Otherwise, we are closing with we'll take a short break and we'll continue with the next session. Any questions?
Are there any visible points from the government's end that something of this sort will be implemented in India as a mandate?
Yes. So how does that work out, right? So IFRS is essentially an independent body, right? It's a whole independent body, private independent body who gave out these standards. Why company picked it up? Companies were looking into ratings. Basically, it was aligned with CDP, GRI, which makes it covering all the different ratings of the world, right? Essentially, most of the questions will be covered. But Indian rating or BRSR do not have any kind of, we do not have any ratings or anything of such, right? But what SEBI has been trying to do, what NSE and BSE has been doing is come up with the list of verified rating agencies in India. You might have already received from certain smaller rating agencies of India, not that much valid. But what that shows is Indian companies are going to be picked up from this whole BRSR, using their BRSR PDFs and XBRLs for ratings as well, right, randomly. And as of now, I think MSCI has also joined in the market of verified SEBI ESG raters, right? MSCI has come into picture. DGSI, I don't know. S&P also have, I think, applied at least. So now people will start picking up BRSR for reporting. Now the problem is, the most of the company or the ESG leaders you see out there, their score was based on their IFRS reports, right? Their S1, S2, which is the current reporting standard they are using. They were already using the older IFRS as well. They were doing their TCFD and all the other niche elements that is required to get a best rating possible. So now we have to shift to that. Since BRSR do not have a direct linkage to any of these, DGSI or CDP or anything, so SEBI has to be forced to, now change this so that Indian companies also live up to the standards. So the whole point of bringing in the PPP question to the whole questionnaire was just so that we can compare between two companies, right? Between an Indian company and between a foreign entity. So that was the reason. So SEBI actively does that to bring in, the whole comparison between international markets. So yeah, you have a point.
Yeah, just to add to that, while the SEBI and the overall in the regulatory space, while IFRS S2, S1 adoption is mandated, there is a huge wave happening in the banking sector where the RBI has come up with the draft regulation. It's been in draft for 2 years, but that's something that will push both adoption of the IFRS or TCFD aligned standards, and banks, it's like attacking the top, where there's a thing in finance that follow the money. ESG is also like that, you follow the money. So when banks start disclosing on governance strategy, risk management, banks are nothing, right? They're pretty much the capital that's deployed everywhere. So they have to then collect this data back from their assets. So that's the segue into IFRS S2 style reporting being adopted. Today the pressure is more external, but on the regulatory front, only RBI and SEBI together are doing for the banking sector. They're not yet mandating the corporate side of things. The real economy is still far.
Right, and then the CBAM puts all the supply chain at risk as well. The same thing, you have to make sure your supply chain is more sustainable. You will have to be more sustainable. So that domino is also set up. That is where CBAM and all the supply chain based regulations also have come into play. Right, so yeah.
This was a great explanation from a regulation point of view. Now, is there something where the rating agencies are themselves saying that we do take IFRS into consideration? Because most of these methodologies are proprietary and we don't have much visibility on how do they rate exactly. But are they saying that if say a company is reporting on IFRS and if their disclosures are under those 4 pillars, they will have a better rating or something of that sort?
No, it's not like that. It's the reverse way that you have to think. So DGSI will not say ki, you have to do IFRS. IFRS is saying that, for example, our questions are more aligned with these people. For example, CDP is totally aligned with IFRS. It's all now part of one whole circle, right? Both SBTI, CDP, all now are falling under one circle. So they are now trying to expand and trying to include the rating agency to themselves instead of rating agencies saying that, because if rating agencies say that, there is a problem of independence and other things. You can't favor one framework just like that. They have to remain independent, right? So that their rating actually makes sense. So that's where it has shifted. Right. Also, there are many Indian rating agencies with their own methodology and framework, really nice, because most of them are based on specifically BRSR framework. I was recently reading one for SES, right? Very small rating, but their methodology is sound. Like, it's nice to read. They are getting better and better. So these kind of things is also very good read on understanding if BRSR ever goes to a whole methodology, if SEBI starts rating, how do you prepare yourself as well? So that's the point. So it's always the framework who will have to adopt with the rating agency and not the other way around.
I think what we also have to kind of understand is ratings are not like you're getting scored out of 100, right? There's also a percentile aspect. If your peers start doing better, then you'll not be rated against those same set of questions. So the pool of assessment is also expanding. So if your peers magically start reporting IFRS S2 and their disclosures are more objective, more finance oriented, more risk oriented, so in those pillars they'll rank better than someone who's just doing BRSR, because there's no element of risk, right? It's still being consumed by your investors, but they pretty much don't get anything from it. It's just narratives. So I think that will start happening as the market starts adopting newer frameworks. So that's the rating aspect.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just to add to your question, so like Adil mentioned, for CDP, yeah, we do have alignment with the IFRS, but for in DJSI also, we have something known as climate governance, which is aligned more towards the TCFD. They might update it later towards the IFRS, but we have the question on climate governance, which is basically on the 4 pillars of that's TCFD, governance, strategy, risk, and metrics and targets. So yeah, it do have. But yeah, we might have updations and as Aro mentioned, the percentile and the weightage we have across all that indicators and dimensions that we might see. But yeah, we do have, ratings do ask on the questions of IFRS and TCFD. So yeah.
So I think, yeah, Sakshi.
Thank you everyone for joining our first session. So after that we have a break of 15 minutes, then we will come back to this session. So after this we have a second masterclass which is in the climate risk AI, and you will be able to see how AI is making it easy to report your climate risk and to see how where are the risks and everything. And after that we have awards, which is one of my favorite part of the event. So I would request you all to join to the second masterclass and then the awards.